Welcome back, friends, family, and followers. Let's talk about what was possibly the best episode to date in Run with the Wind. Let's talk about how the king is finally part of the kingdom that we call the Kaze University track and field team. So, to begin, the episode starts off with a redo of the scene that happened at the end of the last episode. Basically, King is talking about how, like, oh yeah, I have my own life, I have my own shit to do, etc., yada yada, and then it goes into the opening credits. So Shindo actually joins King later that night while he's watching TV, and for some weird reason, by the way, King is like yelling at the TV in some Germanic or Nordic sounding language. I don't know what that's all about. I don't know if King's actually Japanese. Maybe he's like an exchange student, kind of like with Musa. So Shindo tries to talk to him to get him to start running and to get back into the game and everything like that. It's just no use. The guy's really stubborn. He is really super focused on wanting to actually get his career he wants to get his career going. So that's his whole issue. So the next day, they go to practice. They're running to the river as always. That's their morning workout now. What they're doing is they're doing that every morning now. The afternoon stuff or the evening stuff is when they go to that track, that intramural track. So they go over to the river and they're talking about how King isn't really actually there and all that sort of stuff. Like, he's still attending practice physically, but he's not mentally there, like hanging out with these guys. They're all bantering and all this fun stuff. They're having a good time, like as any track and field team or whatever sports team should actually do. So like Yuki, he's making fun of everybody else because he's all like, oh, why am I still here running and all that stuff. And again, he's a tsundere in the textbook word of tsundere. He's completely cold about it, but he actually really likes it. He's really he's enjoying his time running. The JoJos are talking to each other, being infatuated by Hana, the adorable girl hanging out with them and helping them run and all that sort of stuff. And then Yuki's like giving shit to Nico-chan because he's like saying, oh, you guys better respect your elders, talking to Nico-chan in that context, because he is older. He's like probably 22 or 23 years old. He's a senior in college. So and then they're still having this struggle about money. They're talking about how this team is low on money, which is a very common thing. The track and field in college and high school level is one of the lowest budgeted sports there is, just because of the fact that it is not as popular. Now, when you go up to the professional Olympic level, it's extremely popular. That's why track and field is still called athletics in the Western Hemisphere, because it is the purest form of athletics: running, jumping, throwing, etc. But in high school and college, especially when it's not an NCAA kind of thing, it is completely on its own. Doesn't have very much money because of the clientele, the audience, the fans are not as big when it comes to track and field at the amateur level. So HiDive is trying to talk this over with the landlord. The landlord was telling him how, oh, I've already given you enough money. You're going to try to have to make this work out. And this is really interesting because I still don't know who this landlord is. I know he's definitely probably the owner of that old dorm building, the really rundown dorm they live in. But is he also a coach? Because I have a feeling he might actually be part of that. He might have been a previous runner at this school as well. And then later that evening, around the same time that HiDive is talking to the landlord, Kakeru actually goes into Nico-chan's room to talk to him about HiDive. And he wanted to know what the past is with HiDive, like what made him who he is now. And he's talking about how HiDive was actually a really fast runner and something had happened to him where he had to stop. They hint that it might be a really, really bad, gruesome injury, because if you remember in the first or second episode, HiDive lifts up his shirt or something like that, or lifts up his shorts, and you can see this big scar on his leg or abdomen or something like that. So we're going to learn about this soon, and that's what's interesting about these foreshadowing concepts where we're seeing these hints and whatnot. He was saying that HiDive was really excited when Nico-chan had told him that he ran in high school, and they actually used the word glittery eyes. Like, HiDive was really excited about that, and you know, who wouldn't? I mean, when you meet somebody who has the same interests as you, you're going to act like that, especially if it's running, because it's such a difficult sport, and you don't meet a lot of people who do that. The guys also make these t-shirts that have like a recruiting phrase in the back talking about how the Kansei University track and field team is starting to do qualification races for the Hakone Ekiden. And this is where King is also just like, no, I'm not having it, man, because they're trying to give one of these t-shirts to King, and he literally throws it on the ground, and it's just, it's unfortunate because this guy's really stubborn, but we're going to see what happens soon enough. While King is out playing shogi or some sort of other tabletop board game with his friends, he actually leaves the club he was at, and he walks out in the street, and he sees some of his teammates and friends and roommates out advertising for their team, including with Hana as well, and he's hiding because he doesn't want them to see him because they're probably going to give him shit or something like that. And this is where he starts to get thoughts in his head about like, oh, why are they doing this? It's like so pointless and all that stuff. So I thought it was pretty cool how he is starting to see how this is building everybody up, and it's helping with the cause. And then also the next day, Haiji is talking about practice and what they're going to do to improve their training. They're talking about cross country, or CC for short. A bunch of people ask Haiji, what does CC mean? And they explain it's off-road running. Whenever you hear that term cross country, and it's very prominent in North America, that term, basically it's a high school and college running sport. Totally different from track and field because it's long distance and it's also off-road. Now granted, some high school races would take place in like a city or urban environment because there's very little amount of parks or wilderness, but that's basically what it is. It's mostly off-road. It's long distance. They're talking about these workouts they're going to do, which is a 2.5K times 6 laps around a park they're going to nearby. And then, of course, Kakeru, since he's a little bit faster, he gets 2.5 by 8, which is a pretty common thing. If you're one of the fastest people on the team, you're going to be getting a special treatment as far as having to run a little bit longer, harder, and faster. So, and that's what I had to do too. In high school, where I was highly ranked, I had to do that. I had to go a little bit longer. And then when I was in college, surrounded by other people who were better than me or just as good as me, it was the same way. I had to be up there with them and match up to the people who I was as fast as. So, and then later that night, Shindo finds King again. King is browsing around on his smartphone again because, again, he's looking for a job, and he's obsessed. He's obsessed and possessed over this, and it's kind of unhealthy because he's sitting in a dark room looking at his phone all day. Shindo comes in, and they try to have a discussion, and this time Shindo actually kind of breaks through to him because they have a touching discussion about running. Shindo chose to run instead of forcing himself to do it because he felt like, you know what, this is actually going to be good for me. And even though King doesn't say it outright, he is actually starting to believe in what he's saying because he sees how everybody is so happy when they talk about running and when they try to get other people to love it and everything like that. He finally breaks out and says, "What am I doing getting advice from an underclassman?" And then he does like the head noggin noogie thing, and then kind of like strangles him, and he's like, say uncle, say uncle, say uncle. And then so I thought that was kind of a really great moment because this is when King starts to really break in to these guys. He's caving in. The next morning he actually shows up to practice, and he is all ready to run. He's got the right kind of shoes, he's got new clothes, and Haiji actually gave King a shirt, one of the recruiting shirts that has the ad on the back, but instead of saying, I'm running the Hakone Ekiden, it says, I'm running to Hakone Station, which is a Shinkansen or subway station or something like that. It's a rail line station, so a little bit of a typo. That's the thing with kanji characters in Japanese and Chinese. These characters can mean multiple things at once depending on the context. So King is like the odd man out who has the shirt with a major typo on it that really makes no sense. And basically from there, King is sold. He is actually, he's basically sold. He wants to actually run now because he knows that there's camaraderie, there's love, friendship, and there is punishment being enjoyed together, as he puts it. He said, we're all going to bear the punishment together, right? And then they point and laugh at him, being like, oh, yeah, you're in for it. welcome to the team and all that stuff. So it was really great. They go to practice the next day, or later that afternoon, and then you see all this great stuff happening. King is actually really enjoying it. He's racing against his teammates in the workout, and it's pretty damn cool to watch. At one point, Kakeru actually smiles. The JoJo twins catch him smiling, and Kakeru is like, oh, and then he walks away, and then the JoJo's twins go running after him. He's like, hey, you can't hide it, we caught you smiling. And then it's pretty cool because you don't think that Kakeru was actually going to be smiling in this episode based on the context of all the more negative, dark things happening in the previous episode. So I thought it was really cool how they ended it, with Kakeru actually breaking a smile. And then when they get home after dinner, when Kakeru and Haiji are washing the dishes and everything, they have another talk about how, again, Kakeru, even though he's pretty happy about what's going on, he's still not sold on the fact that they're actually going to run this Ekiden. So, of course, Kakeru is a little bit more realistic, not negative, but a little bit more realistic. But Haiji is very confident. He knows that over time, with practice and experience, these guys are going to make it to the Ekiden. And based on the fact that the novel was written the way it is, we know they are going to go to the Ekiden. But the whole point of the story is to see what they do to get there. There's so many hurdles. Like, at first, Yuki was the guy who was like, no, I'm not doing this. And then King was the guy who was like, oh, no, I'm not doing this. But here's the thing. There's still 17 episodes left of this show, so we know there's going to be a lot of story to still come into this. Now, there might be some filler episodes here and there, because 23 episodes might be a little bit long for a novel, but we're just going to have to see how it plays out. That's the whole thing with anime adaptations. Sometimes they have to make it either longer or shorter, kind of like with Tokyo Ghoul and Bleach, but it's going to be pretty cool to see how this thing unfolds. After the ending credits, it goes into that preview, where we actually see a track meet happening. There's a lot of cool little short clips that we see in the preview for the episode Bury Your Fangs at the Summit. You see them at a track meet, obviously. The van is pulling into the athletic center. Prince is puking his brains out because, you know, he's Prince. He's having a hard time. Some of the characters are seen wearing their uniform. Like, you see King wearing the racing uniform, which is pretty cool to see, considering his situation previously. And at the very end, you see either Haiji's eyes or Kakeru's eyes widen a little bit as they look at somebody next to them that's wearing a uniform that says RU or something like that. It could be something university. We're not sure yet, but probably going to be another character who maybe was a friend, a foe, an enemy, or maybe even a family member. So it should be really interesting to see what's going to happen in this debut track and field meet episode. So, again, probably the best episode of the series so far. I'm going to keep my reviews and discussions going for this wonderful sports story. I'm really going to think about building up my production value pretty soon, too. Once this first core is over, roughly around maybe Christmas or New Year's Eve, I think I'm going to start learning how to use this right here, as well as this right here, and then also learning how to use Vegas Pro. I'm going to learn how to actually rip clips out for this show so I can make a voiceover of me discussing it and then having footage around. So instead of like a more of a video logging style, kind of like what I'm doing now, it's going to be more of a footage and VO of me talking about it instead. Because I want to learn how to do some of these things. I need to learn how to engineer the audio input for this in Voicemeeter. I need to take the footage from the show and edit it in Vegas Pro, and then maybe use Photoshop more often to make certain things appear, and maybe pull out the good old Adobe After Effects too. So we're going to have to do a little bit of messing around so I can really improve the production quality for these discussions, because I think it's really cool that we have this show, especially for you runners out there who love anime just as much as I do and like running just as much as I do. So I'm going to do my best to make it a beautiful production, talking about this great show. Anyway, that's about all I have in regards to this week's discussion and review of Run with the Wind, Kaze ga Tsuyoku Fuiteiru. Again, I really enjoy it. So just give me any input you have regarding how I can make this video better, or what I can do to avoid making it any worse, or anything like that. And as always, if you enjoy what I'm talking about as a runner and a fellow otaku, definitely subscribe to my channel. And again, follow me on RealCLT Otaku and on Twitter at RealCLT Otaku. CLT like as in Charlotte, CLT. I post all the time about anime and other wonderful stuff like gaming, anime, manga, movies, current events, Charlotte, real estate development, etc. So I'd love to hear from you guys, and I hope everybody has a great weekend. I'm actually having some friends over tonight to watch more ReZero. Yes, it is Sunday, November 11th, 2018, and I have yet to finish ReZero. So while I'm still on this isekai rush from Sword Art Online, I'm gonna go finish watching that. Anyway, everybody have a great weekend.